Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Customer Service Revolution Conference interview show. My name is Dave Murray, and I am the Senior Customer Experience Consultant for the DeJulius Group. And this is a show where I get to interview all of the fascinating people that we have coming to Cleveland for the Customer Service Revolution Conference that this year will be hosted in beautiful Cleveland, Ohio on October 24th and 25th, 2018. So let's get right into today's show. I'm really excited about our guest today. Joining me today is Dina Dwyer-Owens, and Dina has such a fascinating story that we're going to get into over the course of our conversation. Dina was the CEO of the Dwyer Group for 15 years, and now she acts as the brand ambassador. And let me tell you a little bit about the Dwyer Group for those of you that might not be familiar. So the Dwyer Group is an organization that oversees 21 service brands. They have 3,300 franchisees and are doing about 1.8 billion in system sales. So it is a pretty large organization, as you can tell. On top of serving as CEO for 15 years and then brand ambassador, the role she's in now, Dina is also a well-respected keynoter and an author with 2 books that she's written. Live Rich was her first book, and her second book, Values, Inc., was listed as a Forbes top business book of 2015. So obviously, Dina is a very busy person. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us today on this broadcast. And first, I'd like to say welcome and thank you for joining us at the Secret Service Summit in this coming October. We're looking forward to it.
Hi, Dave. I'm thrilled to be here with you today, and I'm really looking forward to the summit because I know I'm going to learn a ton while I'm there.
Yeah, it's truly an amazing conference, as you know, because you do learn so much. We have so many great speakers like yourself that share so much great information. You can't walk out of there without learning some great new things. So I'm excited you're able to join us this year.
Yep, I'm even bringing one of our executives with me, so it's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. So let's get right into the first question I have for you, and Dina, that is this. So you've written 2 very successful books. And I mentioned already that one was recognized by Forbes as a best business book of the year. Can you just share with our audience kind of the background, like what spurred you to write that first book? What was the grounds for the second book? Just give us some background on each of them, if you could, please.
Sure. So the first book, Live Rich, is actually one that was written primarily for internal purposes. Back in 2003, our company went from being public to privately traded. So we merged with a private equity group called Riverside and really grew like by 1,200 employees overnight. We bought a company larger than ours, and we were moving so fast, we found it really challenging to help all the new employees, new franchisees understand what our values were all about. You know, we had grown the company over a good period of time, and most people were indoctrinated in the values, but at the pace we were growing, we needed to put a storybook together. So Live Rich was really meant initially to tell the story of our core values. And then it became popular outside of our company. So lots of folks loved what they heard and loved the results they were seeing coming from Dwyer Group because of our commitment to our values. And so that just kind of took off. And then Values, Inc. Was the second book I wrote back in 2015 because so many people were asking me, can you give us a book that can tell us how we can do it? And could you also add some facts about how leading with values translates into financial results? Because so many people, not all CEOs, but many CEOs believe that leading with values is just warm and fuzzy, right? It feels good. And they don't comprehend how it can translate into financial performance. And so that's why Values, Inc. was written.
That's really interesting. And I know exactly what you're talking about. In our consulting practice at the DeJulius Group, we hear that all the time. This customer service experience that you're helping us deliver, I understand that it's going to help our employees, but how does it affect the bottom line? And really connecting those dots is really important for a lot of senior leaders.
Yeah, I like the term values create value. And values create value in so many ways, but they absolutely create value in the profitability of a company. And just one quick example, when I think about Dwyer Group, Dwyer Group would not be where we are today. We grew at 125% in the last 3.5 years, Dave. And that wasn't, we did some acquisitions, yes, but we had tremendous organic growth. And that just doesn't happen in companies that are 37 years old. So yes, there are companies who are not values guided, who have success and profitability, but how much more successful could they be if they were in fact leading with values? I'm here to say that they'd be more successful, their profitability would be higher and more sustainable.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I love how you call out companies that either don't have them or have core values, and they're really just kind of artwork on the wall, if you will. They might be in a frame and they're not really part of the culture. They're not really used. Can you give us a couple of examples of how you were able to do that at the Dwyer Group? And I also love that the first book was really written as an internal piece to make sure that people understood internally, especially in an organization your size. It makes sense that there's a book to do that as opposed to just a conference or a training center or a training session. But can you give us some concrete examples of how you turn those into everyday living parts of the organization?
Yes, and you're right. About 95% of the companies, based on my research in North America, do nothing with their values once they're written. So many of them, the listeners out there, may have gone through a strategic planning process where they've identified vision, mission, and values. They get back to the office and do what? They get busy. They don't implement all that hard work that they put into their values, mission, and vision. So the greatest example I can give, Dave, we're in the franchising business. So what does a great franchise organization do? We take what's most important in the business, we create systems around that so that those systems can be replicated, so that other people can benefit from the success that we've had from those systems. So as we took our original values that were founded by my father, our founder, Don Dwyer, in 1981, we took his original values and we operationalized them so that we could hold ourselves accountable to the values as well as each other. But the greatest thing we did is we created a system around how we were going to keep those values front and center every day in our business. And I speak to a lot of audiences all over the world. And I ask the question, how many of you have worked for a company that had clearly written values? Maybe 50% of the hands go up in the room. Then I say, how many of you worked for a company with clearly written values that have discussed their values on a monthly basis? Maybe 10% of those hands go up in the room. And then I say, how many of you work for a company that had clearly written values that talked about them every single day? Usually 2% or less of the hands in the room go up. So I think the system is the solution. I think you've got to create a system for how you're going to keep the values front and center. We simply created a method for stopping at the beginning of every meeting by reviewing the values. So it's that deep breath. Let's take a couple of minutes to talk about what's most important to us in our business. And we will recite all 15 of the values sometimes. Sometimes we'll focus on the one that needs the most improvement. But it's that top of the mind every time there's a meeting of 3 or more people. So whether I'm here, Mike Biddle, our CEO, is here, any of our other leadership team is here, shouldn't matter. At the end of the day, if we're all indoctrinated in the values and it's become part of our DNA, it's the way we'll continue to operate.
That's fantastic. I really love that. I love the fact that it's a daily reminder and as part of the daily conversation, because that's so important. As we already discussed, a lot of organizations, it goes on the wall and it's not talked about. Maybe I walk by it and I think about it every once in a while, or when I'm hiring someone, I have to think about it. But for an organization to truly have those top of mind every single day is got to be extremely impactful.
Well, it helps with decision making. So I also challenge for the last 22 years since we operationalized them, is challenge the team members and the franchisees to internalize the values. So it's a memorization initially, but it's more about internalizing the values so that when it comes to making a difficult decision, you can just look to your values. And we have a coded values card that we hand out to all of our team members too. We have pocket-sized ones as well. But when something is not going right in a relationship with somebody in the business or just with the business itself, we look to the values for the solution. And if you've internalized it, it just pops up in your mind. Oh, I need to look to the system for correction, for example, would be one of our values.
Excellent. And one of the things that I read that you've talked about is how the values have really helped fuel the growth that you all have experienced. Is that an example of how it's going back to the decision-making process and incorporating values in the decision-making process?
Absolutely. I mentioned that we went from public to private in 2003. Mm-hmm. And we had private equity groups approaching us who wanted to, acquire Dwyer Group. And I was very cautious. So was our entire team. As we thought about that, we thought we can't just team up with anybody. We've got to find out who are these people? What are their values? What are their principles? And we teamed up with Riverside because they were principled professionals. So much so, we had a great experience the first 7 years. We were in a relationship with them. They sold their interest, which is what private equity companies do. And we teamed up with another company for a couple of years. They came back and reacquired us, Dave, because they said, we're having a hard time finding companies who behave the way Dwyer Group behaves. And we know it's the values that are driving that behavior, but your results are also terrific because of those values.
Wow, that's really, really impressive. Here's another important question I have for you. And in our consulting practice, we work with a lot of companies on internal culture, and this is a hot button right now because the job market's pretty good. Turnover in some companies is high because people can find other jobs, and it's employee engagement. And I know that you talk a lot about employee engagement. So do we. I'm just curious how you've worked employee engagement into some of the core value concepts, how they're married, how they go hand in hand, and how you've had some success with your employee engagement.
First of all, it's just natural that people who believe what we believe are attracted to our company. So people want to come work for Dwyer Group because of our values, right? It's like, I believe exactly what it is you've got in writing here, but I've never seen it in writing like that. Franchisees even join us, Dave. If you were to poll all the franchisees that joined our company in the last 24 months, you'd probably find that more than 75% of them would tell you one of the main reasons I joined Dwyer Group was because of their core values, the way that they lead the company. And it's not just on the wall. It's not just on their website. When you experience it with them, you know that it's real. So I would say that the values are so engaging. I had a young employee approach me. I was at breakfast one Saturday morning with my husband, and a young employee approached me. She was with her family, and she said, I just have to tell you, I've only been at Dwyer for a couple of months now, but it's a big company with a small company feeling. It's such a sense of community and family, and I love the values. So this is a millennial telling me how much she loves working for the company and how the values give her clarity about what we expect, a lot of freedom to do their jobs the way they need to do, as long as the results are there, but they know what to expect in the way we deal with one another. I'm going to give you one example of a value that our employees love, and it's operating in a responsible manner above the line, which basically means that we all need to hold ourselves accountable, and we have permission to hold each other accountable. So above the line, just imagine the word accountability. Below the line are words like justification or blame or even shame. Sometimes people are ashamed they won't own up to a mistake they made. Around here, we don't have time for the stuff below the line. So we talk about operating above the line, and we have executive team members who in front of the organization will admit when they've made a mistake. And what does that do? That builds trust. That engages the employees because they know they can trust even the leaders of the company, which is where it really needs to happen in the first place.
Right. You mentioned something that I find fascinating, how employees and even franchisees are attracted to Dwyer Group based on your values. So I assume from that's part of your recruitment process. A lot of organizations I know, core values might be part of the onboarding. I'm hired, and oh, by the way, here are our core values. But it sounds like you're out in front with those things.
It is right in front. It's one of the first conversations we have. So new potential employees, go through the conversation of, here are values. What do you think about these? Are these values you think you could live by? Because this is our playbook. This is how we operate. And if you're not good with these, that's okay, because we're not right for everybody. But we need people who care about this because we're building this huge organization, and we need people who are going to lead by example.
That's great. Now, another question on employee engagement. Are your core values, do you work them into regular meetings? And how do you have a structure behind how your supervisors, say, for example, are meeting with frontline employees, those conversations, those crucial conversations, and are your values woven in that?
It naturally happens because when we study the values and we recite them at the beginning of every meeting of 3 or more, often enough, the conversation may start off with, let's say there's a challenge in our facilities maintenance department, right? We have all kinds of departments, all kinds of responsibilities. It wouldn't be uncommon for somebody in facility maintenance to say, I got a challenge and I'd like to address it with this value. We need to look to the system for correction and propose all possible solutions because something's not working here. So instead of blaming people, it wouldn't be unusual for somebody to say, let's look to the system for correction. So it's not a blame game. Let's point the finger. It's more about what systematically is not going right in this situation that we continue to have this reoccurring problem. So it becomes part of the conversation. Even franchisees, Dave, I love when a franchisee calls me with a problem and the first thing they say to me is, I'd like to address this issue and here's the value that I think it pertains to. So they start the call off citing a value or two that they think that the issue pertains to.
Huh. Yeah, I like that. It's
refreshing. It's absolutely refreshing.
Absolutely. Now, Dina, there might be a couple of people watching us right now saying to themselves, I'm not really familiar with the Dwyer Group, but I feel like I've seen Dina somewhere before. And if they are feeling that, they may be absolutely correct because you had the opportunity to be on the hugely popular television show Undercover Boss. Could you share that experience, a little behind the scenes of that experience with us?
It was humbling, I will say. Putting yourself out there, and as leaders, we need to be vulnerable, right? We need to be willing to put ourselves in positions that maybe we're not going to be so good. So it was really a humbling experience. I had the chance to work with 4 frontline team members. In one case, it was a franchisee. And there were things that were not exactly right in the businesses that we had to address. But the thing that I love the most is every one of these associates and the franchisee really cared about the customer experience. And they did a great job. They were quite patient training me because I was terrible at the jobs. In fact, we went under a rouge called Keep Your Day Job. So the cameras were around and they're thinking we're filming this pilot reality show called Keep Your Day Job, where they were teaching me. Faith Brown was my undercover name. I was posing as a secretary to be a plumber, an electrician. And at the end of the week, they would weigh in on, should she keep her day job? And 2 of the 4 said she should keep her day job. She's too old for this. And I thought, oh no, I just need more training. But it was a fantastic experience. And of course, it gave our company some tremendous exposure and continues to air and re-air. So we're thankful to the production company, Studio Lambert and CBS, for such a great opportunity for me to learn more about our business. And the one big lesson, I guess, is just when you think you've communicated the importance of your values and your systems is a reminder that you haven't communicated enough. You've got to continually communicate the importance of your values and following the systems in the business that lead to success.
Absolutely. I would imagine that it's great exposure for the Dwyer Group and get to people see that show over and over as it's syndicated and shown again. But I imagine you took great value from that experience as well. You mentioned that you learned that there's never enough communication. What are a couple other things that you learned from that opportunity to be on the front lines, not as yourself, so to speak?
I was working in the heat of the summer alongside these wonderful people. And I'll never forget being in Memphis, the Tennessee area, and I was doing with the Grounds guys, one of our franchise brands, doing lawn care. And I couldn't quite get that zero turn or zero radius lawnmower down until a little bit later, but they didn't show you how I got better at it. They just showed you how bad I was at it. It was so hot, Dave. It was 118 heat index. So one of the things that I walked away with was I knew our frontline team members worked very hard, and they're in difficult places, from attics to, out in the temperatures, whether it's really hot or really cold. So one of the things I do today, even just yesterday, I was with my mother and we were passing these guys working on the side of the highway. And I said, let's just say a prayer for them. The work that they do is so difficult. And not that I didn't ever notice people working on the side of a highway, but I have such a better appreciation now for they're in this 102 degrees temperature. They're out working, in no shade around in this hot sun all day long. So it's just really appreciating people and giving them respect and dignity for the work that they do.
Great lesson. So Dina, the last question I have for you, as you know about the Customer Service Revolution Conference in October, our audience is primarily business owners, business leaders, managers, typically, that understand how important the guest experience is, and also understand that that's not just the external guest or customer, it's also the internal customer. So I'm just curious, all the things that we talked about today, what's 1 or 2 things that you really would like an audience member to take away from your session when you're here in Cleveland in October?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the internal and the external guests. So one of our values is continuously striving to maximize internal and external customer loyalty. And we think of our internal customer as our employees and the importance of taking great care of them. So they'll naturally take great care of your external customers. The most important thing I would say to your listeners, though, is that you've got to get clarity about your values. So if you come to the session, you're going to understand how important it is to get clarity of your values, have accountability statements that go with those values, so you can, in fact, measure whether or not you're living up to your values. You can't just say, respect. That's one of my values. Because what does that mean? It may mean something a little different to you, Dave, than it means to me. So you've got to be clear about what do you mean by respect. And then you've got to create a system for keeping those values front and center in your business every day. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Every one of us has values already. Let's just put it in writing and let's create a system and hire the people around us who are going to live these values.
Excellent. I love it. And I can't wait to have you in Cleveland so that our audience can hear what you have to say as well. So again, if you're watching this and you do not have your tickets yet, it is the Customer Service Revolution Conference. It is in beautiful Cleveland, Ohio. This year is October 24th and 25th, 2018. On the bottom of your screen now is the website. Again, if you do not have your tickets yet, you can check out our website. CustomerServiceRevolution.com is the site to go. Again, October 24th and 25th rather. And Dina, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really a pleasure to speak with you, and I can't wait to have the opportunity to talk to you in person in Cleveland and have our audience hear what you have to say. It's going to be great.
I'm honored. Can't wait to meet you in person, Dave. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for joining us. And we will see you next time on Customer Service Revolution Conference Interview. Thanks for joining us, everybody.